So one of the designer ways that is the most useful to me is the concept of mental model. One of which I really like to leverage is the complex adaptive system. Basically, you recognize that depending on the nature of your problem, whether it's simple, complicated, and complex, the design of the solution should be adapted to the problem space. And the reason why it's been so useful for me is because I was in my career really victim in trying to apply, to a complex problem, a complicated type of solution. And this typical mistake looks like this. You have a complex problem, but you don't recognize it's complex. You think it's complicated, or you don't even know the difference. And you think that the way to solve your problem is adding more resource, more people, more money, more expertise. Okay? Time, expertise, money doesn't solve complex problem. The design of the solution is completely different. So I fell victim in my job of this lack of accurate mental model to recognize what type of problem I was dealing with. In my career, I was mostly involved with real property operation, asset management, construction project. So within that context, design as a concept there's not that much ambiguity. People understand what you mean by design. And a fact that I find interesting that is the same word, but in the strategic design in a security and defense context, has a lot of mystique to it, a lot of ambiguity. And I'm quite curious why the same idea or concept is received so differently in those two different contexts. One of my most meaningful design moments was actually yesterday. So here how it went. So I'm trying to work on my organizational design and basically trying to come up with hiring strategies. And as part of my design practice, I try to integrate large language model, AI tools, basically, to help me through the design process. With those AI tools, you can basically automate the creative, the divergence, the ideation portion of design thinking, like the brainstorming that you hear a lot of time. You can automate this part. And then you can also automate the synthesis part, the convergent thinking, converging on the solution. So those two parts can be automated. So basically, I fed a large language model with a synopsis of my organization, its constituents, our goal, our value, our mission, what we do, and to give the model some organizational context. I then created a narrative on a desirable future state of that organization. And what I asked the large language model to do is to create personas of different candidates that would be instrumental in reaching that desirable future state. So basically what I got out of it is like a persona, basically a made up CV of 3 individuals, which I could later then war game with the AI, which is best for what reason and why. And basically, me in front of a computer, I was able to replicate what we could have done with my teams of 5-10 people for half a day, and maybe actually better, but let's say equivalent. And this process took me about maybe 2 hours, but I'm still learning and still in its infancy. Why it's such a big design moment is because it gave me a glimpse of how designer in the future will be able to leverage those tools and extend their reach exponentially. So are we stuck with just one island? Is there a way to have more than one? So what would be unique, I think, is it would be connected to other islands with floating bridges. And maybe the other thing would be that in that island, every morning when I wake up, the landscape would be different. I would say I'm definitely a builder. I'm a big believer in learning by doing. If you take, let's say, the popular design thinking model, the last half of the cycle is on doing, experimenting, prototyping, right? So the doing part is really important. And as I mentioned, I try to incorporate as much as possible artificial intelligence tools in my practice. And my conclusion is over time, the cost of ideation is going to trend towards zero. So what does that mean? That means is more and more ideas are going to be cheap. Okay. Implementation, prototyping, yes, they're trending down because we iterate faster, but that's where the rubber hits the road. And this is why I would identify as a builder. AOD can play a significant role in demystifying what is design. Also outlining, promoting, evangelizing its power, its use, its value proposition in the defense and security context. And it can help leaders across all industry to navigate complexity by giving them various mental model on which they can lean on to better adapt and thrive in their respective and noble endeavors.